Okay, well, welcome to technical session number 45, where today we're going to be talking about securing mobile devices. Some of the things that we would do to protect our mobile devices are rather similar to the things we would use for, say, a desktop or something like that. And some things not quite as, the same, but extra steps we may take. So we're going to be working on explaining the importance of securing our mobile devices because fortunately and unfortunately, we keep a lot of our lives on these little devices. We keep bank account information, contacts, shopping lists, calendars, lots of personally identifiable information in these little devices. So if one of these gets stolen or broken into, it can create a lot of havoc in our lives. So we're going to talk about some best practices in securing mobile devices, both preventative and reactive. So things to try to prevent people from taking them in the first place or getting into them in the first place, and things to kind of help you after the fact in the event that a device is stolen. So we're going to be talking about some policies and procedures with regards to securing mobile devices and identify some common pitfalls. We talked about some of those yesterday, like the initial password delay setting, where if you put the incorrect password in, it adds time. And then before they put a stop on it, that led to some pretty bad results, like some people getting locked out of their phones for years. Not very fun, especially if you need access to your phone for a lot of things in your life. And we're starting to utilize them for more and more things. All right, BSMs we want to keep in mind for this particular technical session is adaptability. As we continue to mention, security is an ever-changing field. Threats are constantly evolving, and new ones are springing up on a regular basis. We need to evolve and adapt with them so that we can be able to face those threats, change policies, procedures, and tactics as needed. Also, maintaining future orientation, understanding that the actions we take or don't take today will affect our outcomes in the future. If we don't put in the effort now, our outcome on the other end may not be as favorable as we like. So maintain that future orientation. Also, setting goals for yourself, making those SMART goals. 5 years from now, where do I want to be? 5 years ago, though, I couldn't anticipate the fact that I would be standing in my office, in my house, lecturing to all you fighting people. But that was definitely a pleasant surprise for me. But set up these 5-year plans, make measurable points that you can look and see if you are on track for where you want to be. And that way you can make adjustments midstream if need be to help you achieve said goals. So, future orientation.
Mr. Kelly, would you share the link again, please, sir? I had a reset for my second monitor to detect.
I only share it one time, and that's it.
Thank you.
So, Bernard, can you start off with us, please, sir? Let us know about the importance of securing mobile devices.
Importance of securing mobile devices. Nowadays, smartphones and tablets keep much of our personal and professional information. Information that might be stored on a mobile device that would be at risk if the device is lost, stolen, or damaged. Includes data kept by apps, emails, calendars, call logs, voicemails, text messages, map, chats, social network, contacts, and browsing history, videos and photos with data with dates and times that stamps, and GPS locations. Network connection settings include Wi-Fi security keys, email configuration settings, usernames, and email addresses, purchasing patterns and history, as well as credit card information.
All right. So that's a lot of stuff. I mean, we only mentioned a few things in there. Now there's a lot of things we probably didn't think of, like photos with date and time stamps. Where do you like to go on vacation? Network connection settings, Wi-Fi security keys, allowing them to gain access to your networks, GPS locations. They now can figure out where you live based off of photos on your phone. It was like the old life hack that they used to say when we had just the standalone GPSs in our car. You never put your home address as home in your GPS, because if somebody breaks into your car, that lets them know exactly how to get to your house. So you would list it as something else. Same thing can be said for the GPS in your phone as well. Email configuration settings, there's places where you can go, and if you have the right access or if it is not secured properly, they can get passwords to almost anything on your phone. So, you know, there's a lot of information that we keep with us on a regular basis, and we don't necessarily want other people to have access to that, even if they do get their hands on our phones. So we have to take steps and measures in order to kind of protect ourselves in the event that something bad happens. So some methods we would use for securing our mobile devices. We have screen locks, so, you know, passwords and whatnot, or biometrics to get into your phone. You have remote wipes in the event that the phone is stolen. If the phone is ever turned on, it can be remotely wiped of all information so that it can protect your data at that point. Locator applications, we talked about that before. Up in the corner of your screen, if you see that little fun arrow on there, whenever that arrow is present, that means you're being tracked at that moment. It could just be by your GPS. It could be by one of the fun store apps you downloaded. If you grant them access to your GPS data, they will use that data. And they don't necessarily need to use it just to know when you're at their store. They may use it to know when you're at competitor stores so that they can better advertise to you. So location services are, you know, pretty big, but also it works the other way as well. With the locator applications, you can use things like Find My iPhone. If you've ever lost your phone, Apple has a fun little product where you can go in, log into your account, select which device you're trying to locate, and it will give you an exact location as to where that device is. So it's one of those, like, I had this happen to myself about a year ago. I lost my phone, couldn't figure out where I put it, was looking all over the place, and I was like, you know what, just to be safe, let me go on and check. And then I check it, and it was at the restaurant we were eating at. Oh, excuse me, that was more than a year ago. That was like at least 2 years ago. It was at a restaurant we just ate at. So I left my phone in the booth. It fell out of my pocket. It never made it home. Had I pinged it and it been in the house, I would have been less worried about it because it's here somewhere. I just got to find it. So that helps us identify and locate where these phones are. Yes, Joyce.
That's only if like your phone is charged, like
If it's
it'll
on,
work.
yes.
If it's on, okay.
Yeah. So yes, correct. But we'll get into that a little bit more as we go. Remote backup will allow you to download the information from that phone and then possibly remote wipe it after that. You have the failed attempts login lock that we talked about before. There actually is antivirus and anti-malware for mobile devices. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of that, but they actually do have such a thing. Patching and operating system updates, same as a desktop. Although by this point, you know, backups don't necessarily always happen in the background. We're pretty aware of them at this point. If you have an Apple device, they have that fun little counter on there. Like, you have 97 applications that need update. Could you please pay attention to us? I'm not sure how Android devices kind of warn you of this, but they'll give you regular notifications that you need to update your phone and applications and all that fun stuff. Biometric authentication kind of goes a little bit in with the screen locks, a little bit. Full device encryption, kind of like BitLocker, but for a mobile device. Multi-factor authentication, our new best friend. Authenticator Applications, so third-party apps that you can use to also identify or authenticate yourself. You can use them as single sign-on applications as well as firewalls and trusted versus untrusted sources. All right. Screen locks. There are varying degrees of screen lock with varying degrees of success. The first one they get to is a fingerprint lock, where setting this one up is always fun. You kind of sit there and you put your thumb on it and you have to kind of rotate it so that it can get a good enough picture of your thumb so that you get it from almost any angle or whatever finger you choose. You can use a pointer finger, what have you. There's been funny instances of people using like their nose or different things like that as ways to kind of gain access to their phones. So once this is set up, basically it's like fingerprints for the police. They're using specific points on your fingerprint to determine whether or not this is you. And I think they started out with originally just 4 points. Now they're up to something like 16, which makes it significantly more secure. But over time, these can become problematic. If anybody's ever used like an OtterBox where they have that clear silicone over it, over time that silicone gets micro scratches in it and then no longer reads properly. If there's smudges on it, it can affect the reading of it. But for the most part, that is one of the more secure ways you can lock your phone. Facelock, early renditions of this weren't too great. If somebody looked even remotely like you, it would unlock the phone for them. So a lot of people had their kids unlocking their phones, still have instances like this, especially when you have like young adult teens versus adults, if they're, not too far removed in age, but have very similar facial features. You'll be able to unlock each other's phones, stuff like that. They are getting better. They've added features like an attention sensor, essentially. So making sure your eyes are open and looking at the phone. So somebody can't just hold your phone up to you while you're sleeping and get the phone to unlock, things like that. It's looking for more three-dimensional imagery, so you can unlock it with a picture, and they're looking for slight changes in your face so that they can tell it is a three-dimensional image, and it allows it to map it better. So a lot of things have kind of gone into this. Facial recognition has come a long way just in the last 5 years. So since this exam was put in place, there have been a major amount of leaps and bounds, some of them good, some of them bad with regards to facial recognition. Swipe lock. Using a series of gestures in a pattern to lock your phone. This is probably the least secure method you can use to lock your phone, next to just swipe right or whatever it is, or swipe left or whatever they have it. This is slightly better than this. Does anybody know why?
It's
Go
easy
ahead,
to figure out the
Go
combinations.
ahead, Daniel.
Oh, sorry. It's easy to figure out the combinations to
How
keep on
so?
trying it.
To keep on trying it. But there's actually a way you can figure it out.
I'll say like, is it like sometimes it's like the residue, like it's like kind of embedded in the screen, like the smudges. So you could just like, I don't know, like sometimes you just see it like if you put it in the right angle, like you'll just see where the smudge pattern stay on there, I'll say. Okay,
mental note, never leave your phones around Oscar or Golly. All right. No, yes, it is the oils from our skin. And you can actually see the pattern, and where the oil is the heaviest is usually where you start that pattern. So they can see the beginning of that pattern and move through the whole pattern. And based off of how the grease trails or oil trails cross over each other, it'll tell you. So within a few seconds, you can figure out what the pattern recognition is. Even with the sense of passwords, where you put in the passwords, the same exact thing happens where the first 2 letters that you would put in for your password will have the heaviest oil residue in spots on your phone. So you can kind of just move the phone around in the light, see where those spots are, because those are going to be the spots that you hit the most frequently with regards to number pads. Wash my hands. I believe that it helps maintain my immune system if I never wash my hands. Totally kidding. All right. So swipe lock, it's better than nothing, but of all the options we have in place, it's probably the least secure. So if this is one you're using, please think about it. Just ask you. So passcode lock. Technically, I see, like, this is where I have arguments with this. Technically, this is the, you know, just above the pass, like the swipe lock, but it's not as secure as fingerprint lock. So I have a scenario for this, which I've thought about. And so my real life scenario is this is more secure than fingerprint lock. According to the exam, they argue that the fingerprint lock is more secure than this. So I will give that scenario possibly in a little bit. So originally it started out with just 4 numbers. Again, with the smudges on the screens, you get at least the first 2 pretty readily. And then, you know, you can kind of figure it out from there. Now they go up to 7, 8, 10, how you can set how many numbers you wish to put in, much like a regular password for software or something like that. The more digits, the more complex the password, the harder it is to crack. So bear that in mind. But then again, also the more digits you have, the harder it is to remember. Please don't ever set your password as your phone number. I know people who have done this. So please don't do that. 1, 2, 3, 4. At least try to trip them up and go 4, 3, 2, 1. You know, that's what Marvin always said he liked to do. It just, you know, threw him for a loop. So depending on how you set this up, this is your next level of security. And according to CompTIA, fingerprint and face lock are the 2 most secure. So my argument for the fingerprint lock versus a passcode, fingerprint lock, somebody can kind of hold your hand onto that phone and get it. Passcode, they actually have to make you give them the number. So one's a little bit easier to achieve than the other.
But then in the term of if you just lost your phone and somebody else get it, they might be able to guess the number versus ever getting your fingerprint on like that phone.
Yeah. There's ways around that too, but we won't get into that.
Oh, that's like forensic. Oh my God.
So try to be good. All right, so remote wipes. Basically, it is what it says it is. So you lose your phone, you can't locate it, can't get it, you know, back, what have you. It basically sets it up to send instructions remotely to a mobile device to erase all data on the device if it has been stolen. In the case of like iPhones, this feature is located within the Find My iPhone application. So you can go in, turn on Find My iPhone, so that if ever there is a case where there's a loss, you can activate this feature and locate where your phone is. Android phones do not come with an official one, so you have to buy some third-party applications or utilize third-party applications in order to be able to do this. Lost Android is one that they point out for this particular case. So once the app is installed and set up, it works pretty much the same as the Find My iPhone, and you can go to the site and use your Google login. All right. Locator applications. So kind of like the Lost Android app, which is available on Google Play. iPhone has the Find My iPhone one. You can locate the device from these applications, lock them, send a message to the device offering a reward for its return, or remote wipe it. They had this on laptops as well, and they had it so that if you ever open the laptop to turn it on, It takes a picture immediately of, once it's been turned on, and will send that to your email so you can get a picture of the person who stole your computer, usually. And then it will display a message on the screen basically stating this device has been stolen. So if they try to sell the device, it makes it much harder. And then if any proprietor actually buys that device, they can be held criminally liable. All right. So 4 features within Locator Applications. You can locate it, lock it, send a message offering a reward, or remote wipe it. All right. Remote backup applications. Android has typically stayed with a cloud approach to backups. So this was kind of built in. And there's also like some third-party applications you can use that allow you to back up in other locations, such as like Dropbox or Box.net. I'm not a huge fan of Dropbox, but some people love it. iOS, you connect it to your iTunes account. You can manage your storage on that and go ahead and upload it. I'm not familiar if there are any third-party applications through iTunes that can do basically the same thing, so you don't have to use iCloud if you don't want to. But typically, once it is backed up, you can access it through iCloud, download it to your phone, and then put it onto a new device if you wish. Does anybody know of any other third-party applications on Apple that basically does these backups so you don't have to use the iCloud? No? Right. Maybe they felt there wasn't a big market for it. All right, 5, failed login attempts restrictions. We talked about this before. It can be set up to be a time restriction where after X amount of attempted logins, it'll lock you out for an hour, or like I think first it's a minute, then it's 5 minutes, and it's like an hour, then it's like a day, is what it is on iOS. Android does not have this feature built in, but again, third-party applications might offer this feature as well. The other thing, the iPhone, you can set it up and turn it on, is after 10 failed passcode attempts, it auto wipes the phone. So if the person is trying to figure out your password and break into it, after 10 attempts, nukes all the data. So that's a nice security feature as well. And then we talked about the failed attempts with increasing time limits. All right, antivirus and anti-malware for phones. 2 big players are Kaspersky and Mcafee. I was not overly familiar with Kaspersky, but one of my previous TAs had it, swore by it, so they loved it. But these are just like regular computers, desktops, laptops, and stuff like that. You can get viruses and malware on your phone. So here's a way you can actually proactively protect it and scan it for viruses on a pretty regular basis, keeping it free, making sure there's nobody, one, trying to destroy your phone, the other trying to sniff and steal your data. Questions so far?
I
Yes,
got a
Scotty.
question. Yeah, so for this antiviruses and anti-malwares, what about the other I guess the other companies that do the same thing? Like let's say Norton, they're like, oh, you can buy this version and then it goes to 5 device, 6 device, and then
yeah, they have the Norton 360 where you can put it on 5 or 6. Yeah, like you're saying, 5 or 6 devices. You can put it on 2 phones, a tablet, 2 computers, or something like that.
So would that work the same way, or is
yes?
Okay.
Yeah, but back 5 years ago, these were the 2 major players.
Oh, okay.
So these were kind of the ones that were the early adopters in that market.
Okay.
But yeah, Norton's in the game now. There's several other third parties. that are building their own applications. I always encourage you do your research before you select, especially before you buy into like a year's worth of service, because you may find out it's more than you need or not necessarily what you wanted. So before you pay the money, please look into it a little bit. So same guidelines with regards to these as you would your normal antivirus, anti-malware. Keep them up to date. Make sure the definitions lists are refreshed on a regular basis, because new viruses are coming out daily. We want to keep our phones as virus free as possible to improve their longevity. All right, patching and OS updates. So I don't know how bad it is for Android, but iOS seems to be coming out with new operating systems and patches almost weekly at this point. Mostly patches, and then about every 3 to 6 months, we have a new operating system that comes out. And then with that, you get that flood of every application that's on your phone needs to be updated to handle the new iOS patch and all that stuff. So in your settings, you can go in, check it, and you say check for updates. It'll tell you, whether you have them or not. It'll tell you if it's a big update or a small update based on its size, and let you know, hey, you need to be above 50% charging on Wi-Fi or plugged into another device or something along those lines. Android, you can also manually check for patches, but with this as well, you have to go to the settings about the phone and then check for system updates at that point. Once you're there, once you've selected those options, you can check for download, install patches and updates as you see fit. Questions so far? All right. Biometric authentication. So most mobile devices have these at this point as an authentication mechanism. Two most common being fingerprint scans and facial scans. Other ones that are offered but not typically used as much would be like iris scanners. And the difference between iris and retina is iris is going to be utilizing the camera and taking a picture of the outer part of your eye, which I'm not sure if many of you were aware, but is also as unique an identifier as a fingerprint. So it is very unique. If you look at it very close and you can see the individual pieces of the iris, it works out pretty well. It's not as uniquely identifying, say, as the retina, but it's also not as intrusive as the retina scan. But the thing is, with regards to fingerprint and facial recognition, a big thing we have to worry about is false positives, which would allow someone access who should not have access to the phone. And then unfortunately, we also have to pay attention to false negatives, where it is denying access to somebody who should be allowed on the phone. Has anybody ever had it where their fingerprint recognition was not working at all? Anybody ever had that happen to them? I have. No, I'm the only one. Man, lucky me. What about facial recognition?
My
Shave my
face
beard.
always don't work, depending on if I have glasses or not. Like it doesn't scan all the time for my face.
Okay.
Yeah, I have the same problem too with also fingerprinting. Like most of the time I would have to like reset it and like re-get like I don't know what would happen. Usually it happened after like an update or something.
Okay.
But for the facial one, I don't know. That never worked for me. But I don't know. It's because like my hair, sometimes I leave my hair to grow out and stuff, and I don't know. So I just don't use that one.
I don't particularly like facial recognition myself. I have used it before where it, when I had a beard and then I shaved my beard and it doesn't recognize me, which is always fun. You know, things like that. When you make changes to your face, it can affect this. Now they said they've updated it so that it can read your face even if you have a mask on, which basically means the entirety of the facial recognition is focusing on right here.
Right.
That's basically all that means. So
This is the iPhone?
no, well, I think iPhone, yeah, put that app out, or that update out recently for facial
Yeah,
recognition.
I think it needs it needs an Apple Watch to do that.
Oh, it needs an Apple Watch as well.
Yeah, I think that's how they do it. I'm not really sure.
I have to look into that one a little bit more. That one just recently came out like a month ago or something.
Yeah.
So I'm not overly familiar with that one. So curious to know how they did it. My guess was they just focus on, you know, more your eyes and forehead area for recognition at that point. So there is a formula, I can't remember where it is, where it's like to test the veracity of one of these biometric systems. They have the false negatives and false positives, and where they cross on the chart, there's a specific piece they call that intersection point. Can't remember it off the top of my head right now. And based off the score you get with that determines how good of a facial recognition system it is. Because you're probably never going to be able to completely eliminate false negatives, as well as false positives, but as to what a degree you get is the important part. So thank you for consulting your coworker there, Oscar. I appreciate it. All right, number 9, full device encryption. So this allows you to encrypt the data on your phones, much like BitLocker does for your computer. And many companies can implement this through the use of an enterprise mobility management system. Since this can also manage your installation of updates and stuff like that. I don't know how common these are right now. I know with the company I was with, which was a pretty sizable international company, they did not utilize something like this. They basically just sent out emails saying, please do not do updates yet. And then they're like, you know, we'll let you know when to update the new operating system. So it depends on the organization you're with, how they roll it out. This also allows them, that same enterprise mobility management system allows them to track you guys through location services as well. And also, if your phone is stolen, they can implement a remote wipe and GPS locate the phone if needed as well. So there's also third-party apps that can do the exact same thing. So you can also encrypt the backup on your phone. So if you're downloading backups to your computer or whatnot, you can encrypt that backup so that it requires passcodes to be able to get into it. Please don't forget the password to your backups, because that is rightfully difficult to unlock if you don't know it. Okay. I'm fluent in Google Translate. All right. Multi-factor authentication. I know we've gone over this before, but we need to reiterate this because these 4 points you need to have committed to memory. So the 4 factors that you can use with regards to A+, something you know, something you have, something you are, and somewhere you are. In order for it to be considered multi-factor authentication, you need to have at least 2 different forms. There is actually a 5th one that is called something you do, where they can take into account behavioral patterns, things like the way you type. Your typing style is as much a signature for you as a fingerprint. You actually have micro hesitations in between different types of letters. They will pay attention to this And based upon how you put in your password, then it can also verify you through that. But that would be something that would run in the background. You wouldn't necessarily be aware of this. If you've ever had a case where if you type one-handed and it never lets you in on your password, but you type it in two-handed and it lets you in, it's the exact same password. It's possible they're using some sort of software that is linked to the something you do form of multi-factor authentication. So, but for the test, these are the four you need to know: something you know, something you have, something you know being like a password, sign in password, something you have, be like a key fob, smart card, a hardware token, something like that. Your phone, biometrics, fingerprint, iris scan, retinal scan, facial recognition, things along that line. Somewhere you are, you'd have geofence locations where these accounts can only be accessed if you're within those locations. All right. And unfortunately, through social engineering attacks, there are ways to bypass many of these. The biggest one being something you have. If ever there's an instance where you receive a phone call and they say, hey, we're from your bank. We're trying to update your passwords because we think your account might have been hacked. So we want to communicate with you. And then they'll say something along the lines of, hey, just so I can verify you are who you say you are, I'm going to send you a code and I need you to read that code out to me to verify who you are. Has anybody ever had this happen?
Yes, all the time.
All right. Here's the problem with that. If somebody's logging into your account, what's the thing that they ask? We're going to send you an SMS, right? So they send you an SMS to verify to do that multi-factor. So if they're on the phone with you and they sign into, they're trying to sign into your account, they can say that to you. The SMS is sent to you, and you have now given them the multi-factor piece they need to get into your account. So this is a social engineering attack.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Kelly. When you name in the various preventive measures, you're raising my hopes, and then you come with the fact that it's 100%.
Well, it's an arms race, you know. It's like as we change our security methods, they're changing how they actually try to get past them. So we just need to be aware of it, of these things. So the big thing is like if something like this occurs, if they initiated the call to you, say, hold on, why don't you give me your extension number for security reasons? I want to call the company's main line, and then I will call, and then I will request your extension number when I call back. That way, you know, because you have gone on to the website, you have found the actual correct number for them, you called it, and you went to their extension. If you don't get the same person, likely there wasn't a problem. So yes, it is a few extra steps, but those steps are a little bit worth it to kind of protect our bank accounts, things like that. So, all right, any questions with regards to multi-factor authentication? All right. All right, Authenticator Applications. So these applications are good. Like one of the main ones that they reference is Google Authenticator, kind of make it possible for you to generate security codes, you know, like what is called a time-based one-time password, or was it TOTP? And basically what it is it's kind of like when they send you a password to your phone, it's good for like a minute or like 30 seconds. It's not going to be good forever. So it's good for a very short period of time. It's time-based and it's a singular password. So if you forgot how to get into your account, they'll say, okay, well, here is your password, time-based one-time password. It only works once. Once you get in there, you have to update your passwords, but it allows you to get in. They can also use it as a way for you to access your accounts. You go to Google Authenticator, they authenticate who you are, and then they will give you passwords to enter your accounts using these means. So essentially you would have to use a single login, and then they would give you individual login passwords, one-time passwords to access your other accounts. kind of like a token. Questions so far? All right. Firewalls. So mobile devices, actually, you can have, I guess, a stripped down version of a firewall to work on your phone as well. Kind of nice is it adds an extra layer of protection. It can also hamper functionality of the phone. The big thing is the software itself runs continuously, which is a drain upon the battery. It's kind of like having your screen on all the time. If the screen is on, that is the biggest drain on your battery, is powering that screen. Partly why applications like YouTube and stuff like that want you to pay a subscription service to be able to listen to things with a blank screen. So, also, the very fact of intrusion prevention increases the processing power needed. So it can also slow down your device. So not only are you losing battery power, you're also losing processing power. So your amount of productivity you can get out of the phone is diminished. But if you're dealing with highly secure information, or you're very security minded, this might be a fair trade-off for you. So questions with regards to firewalls on mobile devices? Not often employed. Right. Trusted source versus untrusted source. So downloading applications and stuff like that from the Google Play Store, Microsoft Store, and iTunes, that would be considered what is called a trusted source, meaning we are under the impression that they have done their due diligence, they have vetted the producers of these applications, at least done some basic functionality testing to make sure that nothing, really nefarious is going on, and the software itself is not a way to sideload a virus onto my phone or something like that. So, because as we know, any sort of software we download can also have malware attached. Coming to these trusted sources minimizes our exposure to that. Now, if we're going to Bob's website, downloading free movie watcher or something like that, there is a likelihood, a significantly greater likelihood than if we got it in the Play Store or iTunes, that there is some nefarious software attached to that program or downloader. Apple is significantly stricter with your ability to download third-party applications. They try to restrict that as much as possible. If you've ever utilized third-party applications on an Apple phone, you understand the frustration. Every time a new update comes out, they usually block access to that app. You have to go back to the site, re-download the application, and rerun it in order for it to be able to function again. Android, not as much. You can initiate an APK kit and sideload applications on it at that point as you need. So you do get more versatility, but with more versatility comes greater risk as well. So that convenience versus security, as we always talk about. So they have something along the lines with this with regards to hardware as well. They call it what's called a secure foundry. So you would not purchase third-party hardware or hardware from a third party. You would typically purchase it direct from manufacturer so that you know nothing else has been kind of added to that software before you received it. So depending on the level of security of data and stuff that you're utilizing, your IT department may require trusted sources and secure foundries. Questions? All right. Policies and procedures with regards to mobile devices. Many organizations have launched what is called the BYOD, which is bring your own device, although the IT world, they basically call that bring your own disaster. Because basically you can bring any phone that you want to the party and they would allow their applications to run on it, which basically means the IT has to be familiar with and able to work on or troubleshoot almost any device that's out there. I would argue more companies go with a CYOD approach, which is choose your own device, where they would have a list of acceptable devices that either they would provide or you could pick from to bring to the office. And it's usually like, we'll allow mobile devices for major manufacturers from the last 5 years. So it'll be like 5 or 10 different phones or something like that, whatever's out there. But likely they wouldn't allow like a Linux phone to come in. If you got one of the new ones, I can't remember the manufacturer that's working on that, I'll have to look that up. But typically like an Android device or an Apple device, as long as it was made in the last 5 years or so, they would allow it. So typically, if that's the case, they would implement the enterprise mobility management system to be able to push updates to their software. They would have access to your phones, all that fun stuff. I'm not overly fond of this as an employee. I tend to have a pretty strict rule. I want to maintain complete separation for the most part. So I typically want to have my personal stuff on a different device than I have my work stuff. I do not like crossover, especially when it comes to things like phones. So I would much rather them provide me with a work phone than me utilize my personal phone for work purposes. So that is a personal choice for myself. But especially with things like the employment mobility management system where they have location trackers and stuff like that, I just don't like handing that much of my privacy over to the company I work for. So in the corporate environment, the enterprise mobility management system would allow them to put applications on there and manage it for backing up applications, doing remote wipes, encryptions, firewalls, VPN connections, anti-malware, and apps that prevent you from jailbreaking your phone. If you're not familiar with this, this is typically a process with Apple devices where you can do what's called jailbreaking them. And then you can start adding third-party applications and do a lot more things to change the device of your own volition. The only thing is you void whatever warranties are in place the moment you jailbreak it. So that partially because the device becomes significantly more susceptible to viruses, things like that. So questions with regards to policies and procedures for bring your own device and enterprise mobility management systems. I would remember that. You likely will see that again. And the difference between a BYOD and CYOD. Just bring your own device versus choose your own device. All right. Policies and procedures, part 2. If we're continuing on with the bring or choose your own device, when you're setting up your security standards for what you need and what devices you allow, you need to establish what would be considered a baseline or minimum security standard that you're willing to accept on these devices. This is that convenience versus security, and then that leads into risk appetite. Like, how much risk are you willing to accept for the convenience that you want for your people and customers? So this kind of plays into that. Unfortunately, this may require the creation of multiple security profiles based upon the different mobile devices, models, and types. You see how this can get complicated really quickly. The more devices you allow, the more complicated your procedures become in the IT field. That's why they call it bring your own disaster. So we need to bear that in mind. So with all the devices that you're going to allow, you need to basically make a collection of defining those security settings, implementing them on all the different devices, and you unfortunately have to constantly monitor settings for changes, and they can have things that are uploaded onto these phones that basically alert them if any setting changes have been made to the phone. So if you're trying to decrease security because you want to download something, or if you want to add another VPN on there or anything else for yourself, they would be alerted to that fact. It could be even if you try to load up a application for personal use, it may alert them to that fact that this is what you're uploading, and if that's okay with the software you already have in place. So this is something that they may have in place for you on the enterprise monitoring management system. And as an IT person, this also would allow you to make sure all the settings are maintained and the proper level of security is in place. Questions with regards to policies and procedures so far? We have a whole T session on policies and procedures, so we will get into some of this stuff a little bit more detail. Yeah. All right. Jailbreaking. So as we briefly mentioned before, this is the process of modifying your iPhone so you have unrestricted access to the entire file system on it. And it allows you to download more applications not in the App Store and makes a lot more custom modifications to the phone's interface. In an Android, this is called rooting. And like we said before, it voids any manufacturer warranty you may have for that device, and it violates what is called the end user license agreement. And it might violate the bring your own device agreement as well with regards to policies and procedures. So how many people or how many of you knew that you do not own the operating system that's on your phone? You may own the phone, but you do not own the operating system that is running on that phone. So right here where it says it violates the end user license agreement with Apple, that means that if you violate that, they can shut down that operating system at any time. So same thing with Google. If you violate their end user license agreement of what they say can and cannot be done with that phone, they can shut down your operating system. And you can try to make the argument, but it's my phone. Yes, the phone itself is yours and you can do what you like with that mechanical device, but we will not allow our software to be used in such a manner. So, something to keep in mind. I promise I'm not trying to be all doom and gloom today. I really am. JR, you don't look like you believe me. All right.
I thought when you jailbreak the phone, you could use it freely and put like any SIM card you want in it.
You can put any SIM card you want in it before you jailbreak it. But if you jailbreak it, basically it's giving you access to the file systems, and then you can modify it and change it in any way you want. What you may be thinking about is some phones may be pre-established to only work with Verizon or AT&T. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
So yeah, jailbreaking would allow you to do that as well because you're gaining access to those file systems.
So that's like all in the same realm, basically?
To a degree, yes.
Oh.
You know, and then again, that violates that EULA, and if they so choose, they can just shut off your operating system at any point if they want.
So the phone can get cut, the operating system can get cut off if they found out that the phone was jailbroken.
Correct.
Oh.
Because in their eyes, you're using the operating system in a manner in which they Do not approve. And when you get that 500-page document that you're supposed to read, and then you have to click I accept before you start, that's one of the things that would be in there saying they don't want you to do.
Oh,
So is it likely? Not necessarily. But is it a possibility? Yes. It's kind of like back in the 90s with LimeWire and all the music downloads and stuff like that. Was it likely that the music industry would catch you and then fine you for every song they found on your computer and send you to jail for it? No, it was not likely. Was it a possibility? Yes. So it's mostly my job just to kind of let you know what the possibilities are. All right, common pitfalls when securing mobile devices. This is a big one we talked about here a little bit. Unauthorized location tracking. So location tracking kind of allows them to keep track of where you are, and they can tailor search results to you. Like if you go, hey, hey Google, please let me know the hamburger restaurants near me. Then the device would go in, run a search for you based on your location, and they'll give you several that are in your area. They're only able to do this based off of the search locations. Yes, Golly?
I say, you know the rule, Miss Skelly. Stop saying they Google. Just say Google. Like, don't say hey, because now I got to deal with this one.
It's too much fun, though.
I know you do that on purpose.
So, so that would be I guess a positive aspect of location tracking, where it's seeing where you are, you're asking for specific information tailored upon where you are, and then giving you feedback. Hamburger joints offer vegetarian options, Oscar. Most do. So the other thing is it can be disabled, thankfully. So you can go in and you can sit there and say, I do not want any app to track me ever. Well, unfortunately, that makes them a little bit harder to use. There's also the case where you can sit there and say, only allow it to track me when I'm using the app. Pitfall with that one is, as many of these apps run in the background all the time and don't close until you force them to close. So if you're not doing that, they're in essence still tracking you all the time. And then there's allow it to track me whenever. I don't care, send me as much spam as you wish, is the final option that you can have with that one. But there is the unfortunate thing that some employers may track your locations. This is done a lot with construction companies and contractors. If you're supposed to be doing certain runs, I imagine Amazon tracks their employees pretty closely. UPS, things like that, where it's going to be timed services, like lawn service places do this all the time. They want to make sure that you have been to every location you were sent to go to, especially spray services. They want to make sure that you spent at least some time there. There was one company that was working in my parents' neighborhood. Basically, they would pull in front of a house. They would hang out there for like 15 minutes and then drive to the next house. They would never get out of the vehicle. But their location services would say that they were there and that they were there for the appropriate amount of time to actually do the job. So these people were literally just driving house to house and just sitting in front of the house for about 15 minutes and then moving on and then billing for that service. So there's positives and negatives to it. Depending on your employer, yes, they may utilize this to track your whereabouts at any given time. All right. Now, if you've ever disabled this feature, say basically like I don't want to be tracked at all, and it all of a sudden starts to begin tracking you, this is a good indication that your device has been compromised. You likely have some malware on there that is overriding that and starting to track you. questions with regards to this?
I got a question. So if you disable that, but like, I guess one of the apps that needed, say, it needed, and then you click like just for this app, wouldn't the whole tracking thing start over again?
Well,
Because
if
that
you say
app-
just for this application, it should only allow it just for that application. But again, the moment you do that, you're opening that door again.
Right. Okay.
So if you don't want to be tracked, don't allow it to track you. If you only want it to track you when the applications are open, make sure the applications are actually closing when you're done. Because again, check your phone on a regular basis and look up there and see if that little fun arrow is up in the corner and tells you whether or not you're being tracked. See how often and how frequently you get tracked on a daily basis.
Because sometimes I know I always turn off my location, but then I'll just come back and it just be on. But I don't know.
May indicate that your device has been compromised. So it's just one of those things. May or may not. It could be you're inadvertently turning it back on, but I'm sorry, who was talking?
No, sorry. I was just saying, I was just speaking to myself, saying I might have to reset my whole phone again and start over and see what happened.
It's possible. I mean, well, I would do a test run on it, like turn off all your location services for a day or two and see if they start coming back on.
Okay.
So before you go to that extreme, test the theory. Remember, it's the part of the troubleshooting process.
Right.
So identify the problem, establish the theory, test the theory.
Thank you.
So, all right. Other common problems securing mobile devices: unauthorized root access. So they may grant the owners total control over all available settings on the device, but they do not grant you total control over the entire device. Total control or root access allows you to customize the device well beyond what a user is normally allowed to do. So advanced users may root the device so they can attain this access level. Some people may do it to add cool features to their phone. There were some really interesting moving backgrounds that were on the early iPhones that you would have to jailbreak the phone in order to upload them. If changes begin to appear in the device that could be made by a user with only those kind of permissions, it's a sign that the device itself has been compromised. So this is from an IT profession. If you see things on people's phone that they could only do through rooting the device, you know that the device is no longer a secure foundry. Questions, comments, concerns? I know one concern. When are we going to get a quiz? Not this time. So now we should be able to explain the importance of securing mobile devices, describe some best practices we can use in order to keep and maintain security on our devices, describe some policies and procedures related to it, like bring your own device, and identify some common pitfalls like unauthorized tracking and unauthorized root access. Questions, comments, concerns?